My name is Len, and this is an exploration of one of the contradictions in our society. Our society contradicts itself in many ways, one of which is when something we see every day is considered taboo. When you do a search on YouTube for words like fat, obese, weight, etc., you get two kinds of results. Women who look like this, modeling for their fans. Some of them do it for a living. Some are just ordinary women who have admirers because they can't see women like this on TV. There's demand for them to do things they can't be seen doing on TV, like eating, making self-promotional statements, wearing sexy clothes, and so forth. Regardless of what you personally think makes someone attractive, if a woman is pressured to post pictures of herself because of her appearance, if guys are standing in line for her, if she incites jealousy, then she knows what the prettiest girl in school feels like. The one who ends up marrying a doctor, or just a guy who is going to treat her like a queen. Then you have rants by people who look like this, or this, or this, saying any fat on your body is ugly and makes you a social outcast. So you have a woman who, in one environment, is appreciated, destined for successful relationships, and in another environment, the same woman is made to feel bad about herself, thinking a few pounds is what makes the difference in being accepted. Women who post their constant struggle and anguish on the same website as the model. Do we live in two different worlds? What happens when these two groups meet? And the answer is rudeness. This is a free local newspaper you can find at convenience stores all over the state. There is a columnist who writes lighthearted humor who wrote an article complaining about the fact that she has to see fat people wherever she goes, and how she can't stand the sight of them anymore. There were more fat jokes per sentence than you'd expect to find in a middle school locker room. I wrote to this publication, took the time to explain why this is unacceptable to print, and was told they don't take submissions, even though there are 4 editorialists on staff. This is the first non-paying publication I've gotten a rejection from in many years, and these are distributed for free throughout the state. Everywhere I go, I see men walking hand in hand with substantial women. Many of them interracial couples, often pushing a baby carriage. And it's obvious to anyone with a pair of eyes that they are physically attracted to each other. And it makes me proud that our society has evolved. Now try to imagine something that is well-liked, something that is popular, that can't be shown or promoted on TV, to the point where a single magazine ad about it puts that magazine in the news. Not an argument that is made by a vocal minority, but something that's a complete non sequitur, because it's a joke. Now imagine being that thing that can't be said, not being allowed to be proud. And it makes me wonder, how much of an expert can someone be if they are ignorant of this? Several times a year, every news service participates in a weight study in which they send someone out to take pictures of people from behind. What happens when one of these people turns around and it's the photographer's own mother or his coworker? What happens when a fat reporter who is happy with herself is asked to do the story? Do they send her out of the room, or is journalism just for thin people? Does the cameraman have to look for people who aren't smiling and having a good time? Adele, like most performers, owes at least part of her success to her incredible beauty. And yet, look at the stigma that first surrounded her. She won a Grammy for singing the theme song to a James Bond movie. But you would never see her playing the romantic lead in that movie. And why is that? Mama Cass, talented singer, died in her sleep at age 30 following an extreme weight loss that damaged her vocal cords, brought on by social pressure. If it wasn't for this stigma, she would have had a long and happy music career. So what is healthy in that situation? This behavior is just a tiny glimpse of the untoward thoughts people have against fat, whether it's on their own body or someone else's. And it's not just things you'd expect rude people to say. It's people who claim to be your friends, and those who put on airs of trying to help people, but under this veil of civility, secretly despise other people's appearance, so much so that they can't accept that it's there or that people are happy with it. There are even situations where people think it's acceptable to insult someone they admire. Whenever a fat politician has a shot at the White House, veteran reporters with a high standard of excellence start inserting jokes into the broadcast as if there's a medical reason for doing it. How do they know he's not happy with himself? If someone who insults people publicly is convinced they are doing the world a service, doesn't it stand to reason that everyone who thinks this way is misguided? Melissa McCarthy, beautiful woman, has chosen roles for herself that provide the most business for her career, which is zany, wild-haired characters with outrageous lines and a lot of physical comedy, as if she has to compensate for something that keeps her from getting serious roles. She was on Entertainment Tonight doing a modeling shoot, a very positive experience, and then at the end of the story, the skinny news model says, "And by the way, she knows she has a weight problem and is struggling to get healthy." A woman who is just paid to model clothes tailor-made for her. I've noticed that fat reporters and actresses are required to make health-supportive statements as a condition of their employment, as if their employers are afraid that by seeing a fat person, people will get the wrong idea that they are proudly representing. This raises the question, how do you cast certain roles if the actor is constantly pressured to lose weight? The answer, unfortunately, is they want no fatties on TV at all. They want them eliminated. So what all this influence has in common is that it comes from a group of outsiders who represent an ever-shrinking corner of society. I know it's shrinking because each year at prom season there seem to be more and more chubby girls fitted for gowns and going out with guys. And yet here's a collection of clip art for sale called Body Conscious, which shows skinny women smiling and having fun, and big women who are depressed. not exactly reality or how big people think of themselves, unless we're talking about a token fat person you might see on a commercial who can say their experience is firsthand, but their view of themselves comes from athletic people, and they're probably miserable. Let's take a look at some of the more common justifications for this behavior. It has long been supposed that black women are much more accepted for their weight than white women. Here is a student who wrote as her college thesis that the myth that large black women are proud and strong must be abolished, that black women who are above a certain weight should be singled out by their peers and pressured to diet until there are no more of them. I once saw a cashier who was Employee of the Month, 6 foot tall, over 400 pounds, being treated disrespectfully by a guy. She forced him up against some lockers with her body, and the look on his face was like watching a streak of yellow rush up his spine. Big women are strong, and they have pride. The most common justification for this behavior is health. Whenever fat porn is posted, some loser writes, "Dude, that's unhealthy," as if he's a medical student looking at porn between assignments. Women will break up with a guy who likes them so they can get healthy, and conversations are nipped in the bud whenever the subject comes up, which raises the question, what is health? Is it a fitness instructor who comes up to a happy couple and says, "Stop this. This isn't right. You should base your relationships on things that give me a purpose"? Do the pillars of one science exist only as a segue for another science? Is it something you're supposed to give up your self-esteem and feed your insecurities in order to get? Or is it something like this? Doctors prejudging people's health by their appearance the moment they walk in the door is a problem that's been around a long time. In one case, there was a doctor who was sued for telling his patient if she didn't lose weight, she would never get a man. And now there's this commercial. "Hey fatso, if only you could see what I see. Don't you have mirrors at home?" Is health superficial? I think most of these people would say health is whatever you need to live your life to the fullest. People enjoy doing things, so you should embrace a lifestyle that gives you more time to do them and be with the person you love. So you should trust the ambassadors of this message. So when a commercial targeting thin people tells me diet and exercise aren't sufficient to achieve health without the pill they're advertising, will buying it make me healthy? Is health something invisible you can't get unless money changes hands? I have always found weight studies and research to be subjective. And yet anyone who promotes weight loss has these facts that they pull out to astound people. Like, the heart has to work this % harder for each square inch of body mass. Which might be true. It's just hard to imagine a meaningful discussion made of these. I've only seen people use them as a showstopper, like what Dr. Oz or a magician does. Bam, there it is. So how can you refute it? Imagine being a woman standing against a sea of these arguments who can't instantly change her appearance or doesn't want to, trying to express feelings of self-worth a successful relationship, requirements of friendship, and she is on the losing side of these one-liners which can't adjust except to reveal the speaker cares only about one thing. Two-dimensional thinking is judgmental, crude at times, coercive, and it's not my personal preference that makes it that way. Every diet ever promoted says, this is the way it is, and someone who has memorized this information has limits when it comes to talking about anything else. So let's talk about where these facts come from. Research comes from studies which require funding. And to get that funding, you have to explain why the result will be of use to the health industry. Everybody knows the reason teenage girls have anorexia is because of an unrealistic standard of beauty provided by the fashion and health industries working together. If it's fashionable to be skinny, researchers compete to get studies that back up the message they want. If there was a different standard of beauty, there would be different studies and different statistics. This dissertation is called The Strong Black Woman, Depression and Emotional Eating. Someone who doesn't feel any judgment when they see people who are different from them starts reading this, and when they see words like alarming rate, it becomes less objective and therefore less scientific. It's obvious that these are written by thin people, possibly even someone whose only friends are thin people. The theme is, what are we going to do about them? And this is a problem because scholars come in all shapes and sizes. Let's say our society is divided into two demographics, ones and zeros, who have an equal place in every institution of learning, except that only ones study zeros. After all, look at how strangely shaped they are compared to ourselves. The demographic isn't self-representing. If it were, writers might have to reword what they say, and there would be different considerations and goals. So here is what an objective viewpoint looks like. Let's say an unbiased visitor who doesn't know our culture comes down from space. I guess he's genderless as well. Sees people of all sizes getting around, living their lives with no fundamental difference between them. He sees young people eating what they want with no ill effects, getting together, having babies. Whether they have one eye or one leg, it makes no difference because they're in the prime of life. Our society could just as easily focus on the reproductive years as the cradle of health, with old age seen as the culprit. The definition of a friend or lover could be someone who doesn't want you to change. Instead, he sees a middle-aged woman who thinks it is her weight that is keeping her from finding a mate in her post-reproductive years. He sees people lining up to audition for The Biggest Loser, where people who weigh 400 pounds plus are expected to be able to endure a brutal regimen on the basis that they are unhealthy. Someone has to explain to him that being fat prevents you from doing things. Not these things, obviously. And that in our culture, school kids are singled out because what will happen to them 40 years down the road makes them unhealthy now, as if they were trees and that is their harvest time. And yet no one in our society fights back. McDonald's, a powerful multinational company, that isn't in the business of making people healthy is criticized, and what do? They're pushovers, giving ambiguous arguments like the Big Mac is part of a larger balanced diet, instead of just standing their ground. And most people give answers like this. But the way to fight facts is with facts. Par exemple, if you think something is attractive and your partner agrees, then you have all the marks of a model relationship. It's easy to find each other. Somebody likes you the way you already are. It's consistent. A relationship between two yo-yo dieters is not. Someone who spent half their life packing on the pounds and then half their life trying to lose it all is going to have a hard time with the dating game at any stage of this transformation. What are they supposed to do if they do meet someone who is attracted to them? When a woman loses 100 pounds to surprise her husband, it raises the question, what attracted him in the first place? If you find your partner unattractive, it leads to a loss of intimacy, especially if it is not discussed. They have to exclude the physical from their lives to some degree. Nutritionists and fitness experts can't explain to us how this relationship is supposed to work. The fact that ugly people are out there finding true love stumps them because it goes against their theory. They'll make it sound like physical fitness makes everything simple. It doesn't. You know why? Relationships have nothing to do with it. If you can point out contradictions, you can get people to agree on things that don't require bias. Here are some examples of how certain conclusions by the health industry are based on assumptions. Assumption number 1. Being fat comes from a lack of willpower. Because in their right minds, everyone wants to look the same. Is that true? This commercial shows people unable to enjoy their meals because they're wondering if they've had enough. Is that what you really see in a restaurant? Or do you see contented people enjoying their food? Do they seem uncertain about it? Assumption number 2. Fat interferes with attractiveness. If you've had a hard time with relationships and social situations, it's not a result of being in a hateful environment. It's not because people are judgmental and petty. It's a consequence of your physical appearance. Is that true? These painful experiences are usually brought to someone who sympathizes like it's all par for the course, a situation of their own making. Is that a legitimate psychology? Assumption number 3. Your friends want you to change. They can't accept the way you are. This one might be the hardest to swallow. Let's say it's the first day of college. Students are standing in front of the building waiting to see which of their friends will show up. A girl who was once popular has gained a lot of weight over the summer, so much that everyone notices. She reunites with her friends, expecting to pick up right where they left off. The subject of her weight is something they try to tiptoe around until they finally feel obligated to point it out. She doesn't know what to say. They concede that a change in her lifestyle would allow her to participate in the things they have in mind, and offer to help her as a condition of being friends with them. after a few excruciating minutes in the gym, she decides this is not for her and refuses to lose weight out of a feeling of self-worth and self-preservation. She makes new friends who don't judge her by her appearance and turns the head of a young man. One of the skinny girls sees them together and thinks, I wish that was me. These scenarios aren't just for people to say, well, yeah, but. If you're going to speak strictly about something, then you have to explain it. In a world where fat is attractive and desirable, is it a sign of a lack of willpower? Is self-esteem something you achieve by changing your physical appearance to what is considered acceptable? Without these things, where does that leave their argument? In the case where the woman sued her doctor for rudeness, medical correspondents on the news said his delivery should have been different. It's the way he put it that was wrong. You see Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil parodied for their eccentricities, but medical professionals don't generally speak against them because they're no different from them. It's not just rude, it's incorrect. If someone's job or personal crusade requires them to promote a certain lifestyle and thinking with everything they say, how likely is it that they too will be overheard at some cocktail party one day and reveal their medical opinion is compromised? For someone who promotes weight loss to prove to me they are objective, they would have to explain the fact that bullying and hatred and discrimination lead people to get bariatric surgery. But they can't take responsibility for such behavior because it serves their cause. And if bigotry disappeared, it would be self-defeating. I don't usually watch weight loss videos, but in preparing this spiel, I've noticed a common MO that they have. They take a woman who is no different from women who consider themselves attractive, bombard them with statistics, then make them feel bad about themselves and watch the reaction. Then they make her feel that they are on her side, that they sympathize, enterprising on her personal vulnerabilities. I was astonished to hear a cardiologist say at the sight of someone, "What could we possibly do?" and then refuse to treat a patient despite one of the most advanced medical centers in the country being recommended to them. This doctor was an older man, so I thought, if we both live longer than you, what is the merit of your opinion? If the face of America is changing, it would occur to these people that rudeness may put them out of business, because if their job was at stake, I think they would say what they're really thinking. But they get away with it because there is no opposition. You don't hear the science that goes against it because it's off message. I would encourage you to read the book What's Wrong with Fat by Abigail Sagai. I've posted some questions below to help the viewer advance this discussion. If you think you can address all of them and therefore have a comprehensive argument, I'd encourage you to post a video yourself or send it by email or the discussion boards. Vive les grasses!